Hey everyone, Kevin here, and welcome back to my channel. So I've repeatedly talked about how the whole return to office movement is misguided and frankly going to fail for a myriad of reasons, ranging from the fact that people are neither inherently more or less productive working at home, to traditional bosses who simply lack understanding on how to manage remote employees, and thus force them into an office to more easily control or at least oversee them. Heck, a big part of RTO in and of itself is to justify the company's office space that they've leased out, often in very expensive and high rent areas like New York City, Los Angeles, Stanford, Atlanta, or Austin. Ironically, we're now starting to see the reverse, where companies who force people back into the office have now turned around and chosen to return people to remote positions to save money because they realize just how much they're actually blowing on those needless office spaces. My company literally just did this and allowed the entire HR department, which I also fall under, to go back fully remote. One of my coworkers was actually thrilled about this because it allowed him to move back to Florida where he's from and he's much happier now. But what I wanted to talk about today is kind of tangential to that and how remote work is evolving, especially in this frankly awful job market. Basically, a big argument against remote work, and something that I think many are still trying to fight against, myself included, is this notion that it is inherently isolating, stunts social skills, and ultimately leads to some form of despair and loneliness. And on the one hand, the argument isn't entirely invalid, but I think it's being framed the wrong way. So, to put this in perspective, think back to when we were on COVID lockdowns for a minute, which seems like an eternity ago, but lessons learned from it are still very much applicable here. When we were locked down, yes, that was desperately isolating, and it proved very hard to have meaningful social interactions and to see the people we cared about or worked with on a daily basis. It was tough, there's no denying that. But as time went on, we kind of figured it out. We learned how to keep ourselves busy. We learned how to remain productive, and we relearned how to still be social despite not being in a physical building with one another. We're humans, and humans are very adaptable creatures if you let them be. And even more so, many of us actually thrived. I remember when I talked a while ago how many of us are introverts living in an extrovert's world, and I certainly have always fallen into that category despite having been a teacher surrounded by hundreds or thousands of kids every day. Introverts are still stereotypically not really catered to in the modern workforce, so when we were all shoved remote at the start of COVID, we found ourselves being more productive at home because we could better control our own lives and workspaces. We found the peace and quiet we needed to get things done, even quicker than if we were in the office. Sure, I was lonely sometimes and wish I could see people more often than I did, but I was generally fine and still am. My coworkers and I get along very well remote, have productive conversations even when we disagree, and learn from one another despite being separated by great distances. Sure, I wish we could all meet up in person more often than we do, but it doesn't prevent me from still feeling connected with them in all the meaningful ways. And a point I really wanted to make about this is that people who make this argument that working remote is inherently isolating and deprives you of needed social development are still framing this from the perspective of when we were remote for COVID. But we don't exist in that quarantine bubble anymore. We can go out to the store and not have to wear a mask. We don't have to fight for toilet paper anymore while ignoring talking to anyone in fear of getting an illness. We can go out to dinner with our friends and family now, especially when we're feeling a little lonely. We can go to concerts, theme parks, and movie theaters again when we want to have an experience we can't have at home. And most importantly, we can go on trips and actually use our PTO again in meaningful ways. So, yeah, remote work can be isolating, and we all get a little cooped up sometimes. But working in a cubicle on the 10th floor of some random office building can be equally isolating depending on the circumstances. Many people in these kinds of jobs at best say hello to each other in the hallway or the staff break room. When I was a teacher surrounded by those hundreds and thousands of kids every day, I still often felt alone and isolated, and whenever I bring it up in coffee chats with other teachers, they say the exact same thing. Because people don't realize how isolating the job can be. But I guess my point is that it depends on the person, as with anything. Not everyone is built to work in an office, and not everyone is built to work remotely. Every person is different and needs to seek out the kinds of employment and coworkers that's best for them and which pays the bills too. Heck, despite loving working from home, my partner is an on site worker, and that can actually even make me feel a little lonely sometimes. But again, there are ways to mitigate when those feelings pop up. They're unavoidable, but that doesn't mean they inherently prove anything beyond the fact that humans naturally need some level of social interaction from time to time. As a base rule from studies and evidence collected over the last several years now, remote workers are more often than not happier, healthier, and even more productive than they were in an office. I think that people and companies alike just need to accept that people are different and need different working environments to make the best products for them. And they need to realize that for the most part, they just need to trust their employees more. Trust employees to find the right social balance. Trust them to speak up if they are actually having problems. Trust them to get assigned work done. And definitely please trust that they know how to self regulate and can take care of themselves. They don't need someone looking over their shoulder in the office to stay focused, nor do they need to remain as isolated as they were during COVID. The job market continues to change, and some companies, like mine, are starting to realize that they can save a lot of money by sending people back remote and still somehow see returns on their hiring investments. Stop looking at remote work as a negative modifier and instead look at it as a way to boost productivity and make workers happier and more willing to work harder for you. So, how about we return those return to office workers to their homes and support them however much or little they need? Just because someone is occasionally lonely doesn't mean that remote work deprives them of all social interactions and growth. The opportunities just transform instead. So keep that in mind and stop looking at remote work as a overall negative when it isn't. Well, guys, thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you aren't subscribed yet, go ahead and smash that button. Oh, and click like while you're down there. Every little bit helps the channel grow and supports all of my hopefully awesome content. But as always, I've been Kevin, and I will see you in the next video.